Hi friends, this side Vijay Kumar and you're watching Average Classmate YouTube channel. Today I'm back with another interesting and informative video. Today we are going to discuss a practical VBA interview question. We will see what type of questions interviewer can ask in VBA. So without further ado, let's dive in. This is an Excel file which has one question. The question is write a macro to show the sum of the values column wise, which means here column wise we need to add some. Second line says do not use hard coded range, use loops and variables to count some of the values, which means we cannot fix the range. Do not delete or insert blank rows or column, means we cannot insert blank rows or delete these blank rows or delete these blank columns. So interviewer has strictly denied for that. I think this seems to be a simple question, but when you try to do it, it would be difficult. With this one question, your VBA skills will be judged thoroughly. Interviewer is checking what all loops you know, what all best practices you know, how you handle if conditions, how you declare variables and use those variables, and how dynamic you can write your code, because here interviewer don't want any hard coded range. So the final output I am showing you by clicking this button. I have already written code in the backend, but I will rewrite the code from the scratch so that you guys can understand how that flow is working and how these type of questions should be answered. So if I click this button, you see I got the answers. So you can see here in this range we don't have anything because this is blank. If I select this range, we can't see the sum. So let me just make tab visible. Okay, so now you can see the sum is 528 and that's what we are getting. And if I select this range, so the sum is 507 and you can see the answer is 507. So our code is working just fine. So let's open VBA editor window and rewrite the code from scratch. Alright guys, so I am in VBA editor window. Let's introduce the best practice first of all. Before starting VBA code, let's write option explicit. Okay, so this line of code will take care all the variables which I'm going to declare that I have used or not. Means in simple words, this variables will force me to use the variables which I have declared. This is not only helping me, but it is going to give good impression to the interviewer. So let me create a subroutine and give a nice name to that. Apply some function. Let's say apply some function. Okay, let me check in Excel what all variables do we need. Let me just delete this data first. Okay, now we need to see the last row of our first range and the last row of our second range. So two variables I would need, and the third variable I would need the last column. Okay, last row of our first range is 11 and the last row of our last range is 22, and the last column. To check the column number, what is the column number of this? I want you to keep an eye here. If I select this range, notice that in name box it is showing 12C, which means total columns I have selected is 12. Now I understood my last column would be 12. Let's go in our code again. And now I will write dim last row as integer, dim last column as integer, dim last row, or I would say actual last row as integer. One more variable I would need, which would be used in loop. So let's say dim I as integer. Now let's store values in variable one by one. So let's go and write last row equal to this workbook dot worksheets 1 dot range bracket start. Let's see, range start from A4. 4 dot and excel down dot row. Now let's say last column equal to this workbook dot worksheet 1 dot range, or last column I can pick with the different method of cells so that you can understand both the methods, cells and range also. Dot cells. This cells method require two parameters, row number and column number. Row number I have passed 4. Now column number I need to make dynamic. For that I will write columns count dot count bracket close and bracket start excel to left dot column. Actual last row also we need to find actual. If the variable name is big, to autofill that variable you can also press control space bar. I can also copy the above line of code, and instead of columns I would pass rows. Alright, here we were fetching the column counts dynamically, but now we required row count dynamically. So instead of 4 we need to say rows dot count, and this we can make 1. So let me just make this correction also. Here instead of columns it would be row. Let's go in the Excel. I'm in Excel now. So to getting the last columns, what we were doing from the right side, maximum columns, we were coming from right to left. So this is how we got last column number. Similarly, to get the last row, what I did, I went in the end, which means rows dot count, and then I come control up. I got the last row, which is 22. Let's see in code. So that's what I did here. Rows dot counts, which is the maximum rows, and the first column. Make it more easy, I will run this code step by step so that we can see what all values we are getting in these three variables. So to run this code, I will press F8. The code runs successfully. Let's see what value we got. For the last row of our first range, we got 11. If I go in Excel, so you can see the last row of our first data set is 11, which is right. And last column is 12, which we have already checked. And similarly, the actual last row of our data set is 22, which we have just checked. So far, the code is working fine. Now we will write loop. This question can be solved in many different ways, but I feel this question can be solved in this way, and I'm writing that because interviewer has clearly written there use loops and variables. Therefore, I'm going to write loop. I will write for I equal to 1 to last column. Next, this is how we close the loop. Here I'm going to write the actual line of code which will have the actual functionality. So I will write cells last row plus 1 comma I. Now you must be thinking what I'm writing. If I go in Excel, so it is actually this cell address I have written there. So I said last row, which was this, plus 1, which is this, and comma I. Let's go in code one more time. So starting point of I is 1 because I is starting from 1 and it would go till last column. Means it would start from here and would go till here. Okay, so it would check this, that, this, that, this, that. That way it will check till here. Okay, and while checking each column, it will give me the value here. Okay, that's what I want to write in code. Now I will write equal to worksheet function dot sum bracket start range dot cells bracket start for comma I bracket close comma cells bracket start last row comma I bracket close and bracket close. Now you must be thinking like what I'm writing. So I'll tell you. Cells 4 is the row number, well, which we already know our data is starting from row 4. I again is the dynamic column number. So right now, for very first time it would be for column 1, and last row was 11th and the first column is 1. So That way, what I have put, I have passed a range in some function from here till here. Now that I have used worksheet function dot sum, that would give me this value 528, and that value I am storing in the cell. That's what I want. So let's go inside the code one more time. Okay, so this is working just fine. Now let's copy this code and paste one more time for second data set. So instead of last row, it would be actual last row now. And here, instead of 4, it would be last row plus 3. Because if I go in Excel, so my last row is this and plus 3, which means 2 blank rows and plus 3. This would be my starting position. From here, I want to start. So I have written this, and this would be changed to actual last row. So let's just copy from here and paste it here. So that's all, guys. Successfully we have written some functions. There is only one thing which is remaining, if condition, because these two line of code would also get executed for these two columns, these three columns, which we don't want, because we don't want any value to come here. However, value would be 0 0 because we don't have data here, but we also want to handle that case. So I will say, I will check if the data is empty, then don't run that line of code. I will go in code again, and here I will write a condition: if cells 4 comma I bracket close is not equal to blank, then go and run these two line of code, else don't run these two line of code. So let me just press enter here and say and if. This is how we close and if. And let's indent properly. Okay, so now we have successfully written our code. This was the short line of code, but the question was bit complex or complicated. If I go and insert another button, let me go and insert another button. To insert that, I would go here and I would take shape from here, any shape I would take. Let's right click on it, go in assign macro, and from here double click on it. And let me write, let's give a name sum by VBA. Let's go in shape format tab, and from here I'll select the different theme. Let's say I select this theme. Let me reduce the shape. Okay, now let's go in home tab and adjust it. All right, now this looks nice. Let's just click on it. Let's see what happened. See guys, we got the answer. Let's quickly check. Now let's check how dynamic our code is. Let me delete this. J- just to check that, let me insert some rows and let's fill the same data. Control D. Okay, so I have inserted the same data here also. Let me just insert few rows here also and insert some dummy data. Okay, now let's rerun our code. All right, guys. So see, guys, let's check the numbers. It's matching perfectly. You can check, you can see here 639 and 639. So numbers are matching perfectly. This way we have solved this interview question. So that's all from my side. I hope you like this video. I hope you have learned a lot from this video, even if you have learned small thing from this video. So please guys, do like this video and share this video with someone who is preparing for VBA technical interview. Thank you. I'll catch you in the next one.